Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I'm looking at a historic chart of our economic output, although it's probably not the kind of economic output that you're used to seeing, because this is actually a chart of life expectancy in the US. And we have been in a recession of life expectancy since at least the 1980s. And we did really well during our so-called Great Depression, which was not really that depressing. People were slowing down and actually thinking about their lives instead of racing from one gig to another. Now, what's also interesting, this chart doesn't go far enough, but this is the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. And if we were to continue this chart, I couldn't find one that goes that far, that actually breaks it down into male and female. COVID-19 doesn't even show up. Now, why? Because, for the most part, most people who died of COVID-19 probably would have died of something else within a few months, if not for COVID-19. They were literally one opportunistic infection away from dying, right? Most people. I know there's going to be a few exceptions in there, but for the most part, I heard that if you died of a car accident 2 years ago, and on the way to the hospital they tested you and you happened to have COVID-19, they listed your death as a COVID-19 death because there were some financial benefits to that. Now here's another chart to demonstrate what it means to be in a so-called economic recession versus a lifestyle recession. Here's a chart of sugar consumption from 1820 up until today, and for about 100 years our sugar consumption exploded, and then quote unquote we couldn't afford it anymore during the Great Depression, and people, as you may remember from this chart, people started to live a lot longer than they had during the 100 years leading up to. I gotta point out something. Mary Curie discovered polonium right about here. She didn't lose her creativity because she couldn't afford to eat twice as much sugar than she did. I bet she ate even less sugar because at the time there was a lot of prejudice against women, right? I would imagine she's also a sexual minority. She didn't remarry after she became widowed, right? And so she probably wasn't even among here, right? A lot of people, I quit eating sugar right about here at the peak of that. A lot of people worried for me. They thought I was going to die from that. Nobody was dying from not having sugar back then, right? We discovered, we added about half of our periodic table during this time period, right? So polonium and radium was here. Technetium, which was the first synthetic element, was right about here. And then obviously the transuranic. Despite the Great Depression, we discovered neptunium, plutonium, americium, fermium, curium, among other elements. And we call that a recession, that we actually had to eat healthier. Now what gets me excited is I was just reading a news article that at the beginning of our transitory inflation in 2020, a lot of Americans were trading down on their groceries. Now they're actually eating less. I'm excited for that. That's actually a sign of economic boom. But unfortunately, we live in a consumption society. The more we waste, the better, right? Right now, I think 50% of the food produced in the United States ends up in a landfill. And we call that a boom for some reason, right? I'd rather we produce 50% less food, don't put it in the landfills, and actually spend our energy finding chemical element 119, right? That's a real boom right there. And that definitely will be reflected in the real GDP chart, right? Not the fake monetary GDP, but the real life out. Think about it. Why do we go out and make money or produce things? To improve this, right? Not to improve the number in our wallet, right? I thought I would point though. Americans are completely lost. We're so lost that as soon as our monetary GDP goes up, our real life GDP goes down, and vice versa, right? In most parts of the world, those two things go in the same direction, right? That's how lost we are with our finances. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.